Hi, everybody, welcome back. I'm the Stratch Professor, and today we're going to be starting a brand new campaign with the Baldur's Gate 3. So, just came out today as of this recording, and we're playing something a little different. We don't do too many single-player playthroughs on the channel, but I do really enjoy doing them. I know we did, I think, like 30 episodes of Witcher and 30 episodes of Cyberpunk, and those are really fun. This is not sponsored by anybody, so I'm just doing it because it looks interesting and I want to do it. So, hopefully you enjoy it too. I will preface by saying that I am not an expert in this game. I did play about 35 hours of early access. I just heard about this game like maybe a few weeks ago or so. I know it's been in the making for like 10 years. And I would have been playing the early access a lot earlier if I knew it, because I do really like kind of turn-based games. I really liked XCOM, and I liked Civ 5 from kind of the mid-2000s or so. And I kind of like these sort of dark fantasy worlds as well, like Witcher 3 was really cool. So, I don't have a lot of familiarity exactly with this game. I have studied it a decent amount over the last few weeks, and like I said, I did put about 35 hours in, but if you guys know any like cool tricks or just things that I'm missing out on or stuff that you'd like to see, definitely let me know in the comments what you think. I also will say I haven't played Dungeons & Dragons tabletop ever. I wish I did. It looks like a lot of fun. I've just never had kind of the right group of people around to run one of those. But I have played a lot of adjacent fantasy things. Like I played Magic the Gathering. I played lots of fantasy games. So I'm familiar with a lot of the, basic concepts of things. But as far as like the technicalities of it, I'm not going to be a pro. Nevertheless, I am going to do Tactician. I always like to play everything at the highest difficulty level, so we'll see. And my intent is to play through as much as I can just straight up without save scumming. So without going back and just re-rolling until I get exactly what I want. There might be a time or two where there's a really clutch moment where I just get like turbo trolled, where there's like a really important like character development moment and I need to roll a 2 or higher, and I roll a 1 like 5 times in a row or something, and then, my favorite companion leaves me. One of those, maybe. We'll reconsider, but, like, in general, I would like to try to play it straight through without save scumming, if I can. Okay. Okay. Wow, there goes Pikachu. Okay, so, we'll just watch the cinematic here. I will say this is, in general, a mature game. Sort of on the order of Witcher 3, so there is some sexuality and there is some kind of creepy body horror at the beginning, so if that freaks you out, I apologize. The whole game's not like that, but it is what it is. So let's go ahead and watch this. Because this is kind of freaky early on. So this is first person you watching that with kind of that eye looking camera angle. This freaks me out so much, man. That kind of stuff, that's like my worst nightmare. If it's like,
who are you?
It's like this creepy voice in your mind now. So it does play into the story, obviously, a ton. Now, I wanted you guys to play the cinematic, so I couldn't like preload everything that I wanted, but I have looked at kind of the character creation and decided what I wanted to do. I'll walk you through a couple of different options. I'm not going to go super in depth. I'm sure there are a lot of tutorials out there as far as like picking your character and things like that. But you can pick from these companions, so you will run into these people naturally fairly early on in the game. But you can also play as them, and I am interested maybe in a future playthrough of just going back through, because I think you get unique cutscenes and insights into their stories, and each one of them has kind of a complex story with, you know, sort of a lot of gray moral stuff in it. So it would be cool to see it from their perspective. But my first one I'm going to custom, do my own, and then maybe we'll go back through. One of particular note that a lot of people will probably do is this Dark Urge. So with this one, you kind of have to take an evil path. I think pretty much this one embraces the Mind Flayer, which is that tentacle thing that put the tadpole, as they call it, in your brain. And you can go around and get more tadpoles and put more tadpoles in your brain. And if you do that, then you get an extra skill tree with like a bunch of extra power. But we don't know exactly what happens. But I assume it probably corrupts you a lot more over time. And I want to do a good playthrough. I always like kind of being a good guy. So my hair is just acting crazy. I always like to be a good guy, so I'm kind of like chaotic good, just representing whoever I want to represent that I think is a good thing to do whenever I can. So I always kind of see myself as chaotic good in these fantasy games, and in life, to a large extent as well. So I'm probably not going to do the Dark Urge. Maybe in another playthrough, we can check it out. And most of my favorite characters that I'm probably going to be leaning towards are going to be like Shadowheart and Gale seem to be the two that I vibed with the most, that kind of like the chaotic good style. But anyways, if you do custom, there are several things you can do. So these guys are pre-made. You cannot change much about them. There are a couple of things you can change. Like you can change a couple of their spells, a couple of light things. But I don't think, at least not from the very beginning, you can change much about who they are. But if you do custom, then you can do everything yourself. So the thing that everyone's probably going to ask first is which class do you want to be? So there are 12 different classes. And within these classes, with several of them at a certain point, usually around level 3, some of them as early as level 1, you get to specialize. So, and there's only 12 levels in the game. So there's a lot of content though. I didn't even get through Act 1 in 35 hours, and I was like level 4. So there's a lot of content. But again, you can look and research all of these up. They all have different sort of functions and things that they do. So Barbarian, just really quickly, the TLDR, lots of physical damage as you would expect. Very little in the way of utility, like defense, casting spells. Not great at like conversations, picking locks, sort of non-combat skills. But they will throw down the pain. So if you want to do a lot of damage, they're great. And, you know, dialogue is really important in this game. And, you know, I think to get the kinds of outcomes that you want to get, whether it's evil or good or somewhere in between. But you can use one of your companions to do the dialogue for you if you do want to play a heavy damage dealer. So you can still play Barbarian and then just have, you know, someone like your Warlock talk for you, someone who has high charisma, someone like Will talk for you, and do the dialogue checks. So your companions can cover up for things you don't have. So if there's something where you need a lot of intelligence or you need a lot of wisdom to open this mystical book or something, you can have your paladin do that, who has high wisdom, or so on and so forth. You need to steal some stuff, or you need to lockpick some things. You can befriend, you know, Astarion and bring him with you, the thief, the vampire thief guy. So you can make up for all of these potential shortcomings that your character might have if you want to play something that's kind of extreme like the Barbarian that does one thing, which is smash stuff and kill things. But he is fun. I am going to pick the Bard. Spoiler alert, I'll talk about them at the end, obviously. Cleric, I think, is really good. They do have, like, healing spells, and that's what people usually think of if they think of clerics, but they really have a lot of utility spells, too, that are very good. Lots of great sort of buffs for your allies, some really good out-of-combat stuff. This, in particular, guidance is really nice. That helps you pass your lock-picking, your sort of sneaks, your dialogue checks, all of that. This gives you an extra 1 to 4 bonus on those dice rolls, and that's huge. So that's really, really good. Now, you do get a paladin, like, or a cleric super early in the game, so you don't have to have this on your main character, but Really, really useful. Cleric's one of my favorite classes so far. Druid, I have not played a Druid, and I have not had a Druid companion, and I didn't get far enough to get one of the Druid companions you can get. But they can turn into animals, which have some nice utility to them. They can talk with other animals, they can fly, they can dig under things. So they have probably the best out of combat, just interacting with the environment stuff that you can do. Now you can do most of that stuff, I think, with other characters or with spells that can help you out. But they do have a lot of unique things you can do there. They're pretty proficient casters. I would say, like, early on, they're like mostly utility and support, but I think they get some pretty good AoE magic with lightning and things like that later. So they're just a good kind of all-around utility caster type of champ. You got the fighter. You will get one of these as a companion early on. Very similar to the barbarian. They wear a little bit more armor. I would say they have maybe slightly more utility than the barbarian does, and maybe deal a little bit less damage early on. But they are pretty versatile in terms of how they fight and how you can use them in combat. So, pretty strong class. Monk, I'll be honest, it was not in the early access. I know virtually nothing about this. I know they're supposed to be an early game, or not early game, but like powerhouse melee damage dealer, but I don't know how they stack up against things like the barbarian. I just don't have a lot of experience with it. They're probably cool. I think they are designed to be a little bit more of an advanced class with different like combos and things like that, but I just don't know. Paladin, haven't interacted or done much with paladins. Kind of a blend, as in most games, of like pretty good melee fighter, tanky champion, good utility spells, good healing. So just another kind of all-arounder. Probably not as much damage as barbarian fighter, but if you need a frontliner to tank, he's got some good defense, got some pretty good utility. He's nice. I think one of his main things is charisma. I think his spells scale based off charisma. So he can be a good dialogue person if you want someone who's a fighter that's also going to be one of your main dialogue people. Then he's a pretty good choice there. Ranger, don't have a lot of experience there, but it's your standard physical damage dealer with bows. I think they have a specialization where they can do a lot better with melee stuff eventually. So, pretty decent, just sort of physical damage class. Rogue, as you would expect, sneak up on people, really good at stealing stuff, disarming traps, sort of getting the drop on people, doing a lot of damage right up front. They're going to be squishy. You guys know what a rogue is. It's in everything. I don't know if they have as much sustained damage as like barbarian or fighter. Maybe. If they can disengage, one of their biggest things is they can go with one specialty, thief mode, which basically allows you to attack 3 times in one turn. Main hand, offhand, and then offhand again. Which is pretty big. However, you're wielding things like daggers and swords. Versus, like, barbarian's only going to get to attack twice, but you're yielding, like, a huge, great sword or maul or something like that that's really going to smash people. It does, like, 2 or 3 times as much damage as a dagger. So, I think they're pretty good. And the thing is, like, I believe you can distribute their points to make them decent at charisma as well. So they can be a good stealer and talker. I will say overall, I think the best stats that I've seen, at least in the early game, is dexterity by far. So I think a dexterity character is really, really good if you can get dex, because it affects a lot of different skills. There are a lot of chests that are locked. There are a lot of traps out there. So you can disarm those. Pickpocketing is extremely profitable if you pickpocket from shopkeepers or just people that have items that you need. That can be very profitable. And then in combat itself, a lot of really dangerous spells have a dexterity saving throw. So the higher your dexterity is, the more likely it is you're going to dodge like a fireball coming at you or some other evocation type of spell. So it's kind of good defensively. It also increases your armor value. Every point of dexterity, if you have light armor or medium armor, is going to give you an effective extra point of armor. So it makes you more durable. It determines the fight order early on, or influences that. So like who gets to move first. And if you get to move first, that's a really big deal. If you get to crowd control a really important enemy, or, you know, maybe even kill an enemy before they get to move. If you have enough, like, high dexterity characters, that's obviously really strong. And it amplifies your damage if you use a melee weapon that's finesse, or with ranged weapons like bows. So there's just like a million things that dexterity does, both offensively, defensively, and out of combat. So I think it's the most OP stat in the game. There are a lot of things that require dexterity. So I think I would highly recommend playing somebody that has high dex, if you feel so inclined, or at least having someone on your team. If you don't roll with the dex person early, you're probably going to have Astarion, because he's the thief, and I haven't used him that much, but he tends to disagree with a lot of the decisions that I make in the game. He's kind of whiny, he's kind of a brat, at least that I've seen early on, so he's sort of hard to get along with, and I've heard that if you piss off the companions enough, they'll just abandon you, so then you wouldn't have a dexterity person. So I would prefer to keep the dexterity, you know, on my character. I want to have someone that can deal with those traps and open those chests and do all that other stuff. Now, another stat that's extremely good, I think, is Charisma. For all the dialogue checks, Charisma is massive. It can make your life so much easier and open so many doors for you. Also, if you steal something from somebody, even if you pass the steal check, they don't catch you in the act and immediately go aggro with you. They will notice something has stolen, and they will come over and talk to you about it. And you'll have some dialogue options to try to deal with that. And if you have really high charisma, you can talk them out of suspecting you. You can just say, oh, I would never steal from you, you know, blah, 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 something like that, right? And so if you're going to be stealing a lot of stuff, you also want high charisma on that same character, ideally, so you can pass those dialogue checks. Now, you can do other charisma-like things other than just persuasion. I think you can do intimidation or deception, but those are all charisma checks. So charisma, very nice to have on your thief too. So that's why I think I would either go rogue thief. This is what I was thinking when I was picking my character. Either rogue thief and pick a rogue and just like get that charisma up to at least 14 or maybe even 16. Or bard and get your dexterity up, because your dexterity is already 15 on bard. So you can easily get the dex to 16 and the charisma to 16, and that's why I'm going bard. So I think the thief has a lot more burst damage potential with their sneak attack stuff. They're going to do more damage than the bard, but the bard has a lot more utility, so that's why I'm going bard. Anyways, we'll talk about bard in a second. But those are my thoughts early on about really important stats. Sorcerer, honestly, I haven't done a lot with them. They cast a lot of spells, they have a lot of spells, and they can do augmentations to the spells. So you can make it where it does a little bit more damage, or shoots a little bit further, or just does something like that. Okay. Warlock is interesting because they do have high charisma as well. They have pretty decent dexterity. They don't gain a ton out of their dexterity. I mean, it does help them with armor. So conceivably, you could do Warlock too with that kind of build that I'm talking about. That could be good. Now they only have 2 spells though that they can prepare. So these spells level up every time. So you're always casting the highest level spells, but you only get 2 and you have a short rest. Will refill them. With most other characters, it's only long rest. So basically what that typically means is they're going to have a lot less spells in combat, but out of combat you get to refill them, so it ends up being a similar amount of spells as long as you don't have one really extended combat, like versus a boss or something. Now they do have one of the best cantrips. Now these don't count as spells. Like, they are spells that you cast, but you can cast them an infinite number of times. This thing here, Eldritch Blast, you're going to be spamming all the time. So they're kind of like archers, where they just constantly spam this as damage, and it's got a lot of great utility, hits pretty hard, there are lots of modifiers that can scale with it, and it can knock people back. So it can knock things off edges, it can knock them on their back, which is kind of a disability status. So they're pretty good. They're pretty good. So Warlock is up there in terms of interesting things to play. They can also summon a familiar like an imp, which adds extra utility, a little bit of damage. It can poison them. They have another pet they can summon that can make them scared. So they have pretty good utility overall. So Warlocks, I think, are pretty nice, and you could do the Dexterity Charisma Warlock if you wanted to. And then finally, Wizard. they have the most spells, I think, of anybody. Sorcerer might have the most. They have a lot. They have a lot of spells and a lot of spell slots, but they're made of paper. They can't wear any armor, I don't think, typically, unless you pick a race where they can wear armor. You know, their physical abilities are very low. They have very low HP. They scale off of intelligence, which is nice. There are quite a few intelligence checks out there out of combat. Not as many as charisma that are important in my mind. But you can do that. But you have to have intelligence. So you really can't do charisma and dexterity with them. And we will have one of these guys early on with Gale, who is someone that I tend to gel pretty well with in my role playing. But yeah, they are cool. Okay, so that brings us to the Bard. So why Bard? Well, like I said, you know, initially, dexterity, charisma, very easy to max this out with them, which is good. And they do get nice bonuses for both of those. So, you know, they can shoot crossbows, they can use a rapier. Both of those are dexterity weapons. If you need to do some melee combat, they can do it. Not as well, obviously, as fighter barbarian, but they can get in there, deal some physical damage. They have some pretty good cantrips. The most notable one is Vicious Mockery, which is only for Bard. And pretty much if you hit a creature with this, there's a high likelihood that it's going to miss on its next turn of combat. So you pretty much deal a very small amount of damage, but you neutralize a creature if you hit it, which is extremely good against hard-hitting creatures like bosses if you land this on them. And it's a wisdom save, which a lot of like beast type of bosses, like a big spider that you face kind of in the early game, are going to fail this a lot. So this is pretty nice. Utility, crowd control. And then their other spells are also quite good. If we go down to their spell options here, lots and lots of utility as you would expect from a bard. So they've got Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This is one of the best ones that I've noticed. It's a level 1 spell, and it can CC somebody for up to 10 turns. So they don't do anything. They just sit there and laugh. Now, they can break out of it every turn they get a chance to break. But it is really nice. And they start off on their back. So even if they do break out of it, they're not going to be able to do very much the turn they get out of it, except for just get up. So you're getting like one good turn of CC pretty much guaranteed if it hits them. So, incredibly powerful. You've got Speak with Animals, which other characters can get this too, but it is nice that you can get it early on if you want to. This is a fairly unique one to Bard. I think there might be one other class that can get Heroism, maybe Paladin, I think. But basically, it makes a character immune to being frightened, which is a powerful debuff the enemy can put on you. And it gives them 5 hit points, basically like a shield, every single turn of combat, which is a lot. Early on, your HP is going to be like 10 to 20. So 5 is a lot. So put this on your frontliner, your barbarian, your fighter, whatever, and just get up there and just start busting them up. It's incredibly strong. So Heroism's great. He can't actually naturally get the Friendship early on, but you can get that another way. I'll show you. But Friendship is pretty good too as a cantrip. Or no, that's in the cantrips thing rather than the spells. Okay. Dissonant Whispers is actually quite good early on too. It's reasonable damage, 3 to 18 for early game, and it has a chance to cause fear on the target for 2 turns, which again is a pretty good debuff. Fairy Fire is very nice. Every single one of your allies that attacks an enemy that has Fairy Fire, and you can fire up their whole team if you want to, is gonna almost hit them every time. It's gonna have advantage, which means you get to roll 2 dice, so you have 2 chances. So yeah, just lots and lots of good stuff. Not heavy damage dealing, but just nice utility there. You can also play instruments, which are cool. It doesn't do a lot. You can get a little crowd around you. Sometimes you can distract a crowd while you sneak off with another character and do something else. That's kind of fun. And you get a lot of skills. That's one of my favorite things about them, is you're really, really good. Probably the best in the game at managing non-combat situations. Right up there with the Druid. Druid's good with dealing with objects and getting around things, but the Bard is really good at dealing with like people and stuff that you're finding, books that you're trying to read and things like that. Okay, so Bard it is. Now, when it comes to race, they simplified this quite a bit from the early game. Used to get very particular stats depending on which person you pick, but now you get 2 points you can put in whatever, and then 1 point you can put in something as well, regardless of your race. So you get the same stats. So it's just basically these little perks are the main differences. Another one is like politically, certain people, certain factions will talk to you a bit differently if you are a different faction. But there are spells you can get to fix that. So there's like a disguise self. I think the Bard actually has disguise that you can get if you want it. Yeah, disguise self, where you can look like any faction that you want if, you know, you want a better dialogue check with someone who's racist against your faction or who's really broed up with their faction, that type of thing. So it's really up to you. The three, I guess, that I would really consider for Bard probably. First of all, they reworked Githyanki and gave them this, like, massive buff. And honestly, I hate to be that guy, but it is a role-playing game, and if I just liked the appearance of the Githyanki a little bit more, or I just didn't care as much about their lore, kind of being this bloodthirsty warrior race, then this is probably the best ability in the game. Racial ability in the game. Astral knowledge. So basically, you pick a stat, and you get, like, proficiency in everything. So dexterity, strength, intelligence, whatever. And proficiency means you get bonuses on your rolls. So you're trying to read a book, there's an intelligence check. It might tell you you need to roll a 15 to read that book. You start off with baseline 10, and then you can add, if you're proficient, it'll add 2 extra points to your rolls. So if you roll a 13, then that would be good enough to bump it up to the 15 or whatever. So proficiency is really, really good. And the fact that you get proficiency in like 4 or 5 different skills is just nuts. Like, but you gotta be the green orc. It's not exactly orc, but this bloodthirsty race green person. And they don't really, like, Martial Prodigy is pretty good too. It gives you medium armor, which especially for Bard, you can only wear light typically. So that would make you a little sturdier. The Mage Hand is actually pretty good too. So they're really good. Like I said, if it wasn't for the lore and the aesthetics of it, I think Githyanki's probably the best. For almost anybody, honestly. If you're really, like, worried about those out of combat checks, like, it's so good. Because this doesn't cost you a spell slot, nothing. Every time you have a long rest, you just click it and boom, you're proficient in all that stuff forever. No concentration, no spell checks, nothing. You're just really good at all these skills. So, that's extremely good. Not gonna do it though. Human got reworked. They gave you a lot of extra skill points before, and now you do get shields with them, which is okay, and you get 1 extra skill to be proficient in. So Githyanki give you like up to 5 extra skills you can be proficient in. Humans will give you 1. You can carry a bit more stuff, which doesn't matter. So humans are okay, but I think I'm going with the high elf. I know that's kind of generic, that everybody plays elves. I forgot what it was in like World of Warcraft. The amount of people that played elves, like blood elves specifically, it's just like through the roof. And I know that's kind of like the memes, the female blood elf and whatever. And I'm gonna play a female high elf here. I just like the aesthetics. Okay, I don't care. I don't care if it's you know, whatever it is. That's just how I roll. But anyways, they also have pretty good stuff. So, first of all, they get Vision in the Dark, they get Fey Ancestry, so it's really hard to charm them, and you can't sleep them, so they're immune to a lot of this mind, you know, warping stuff out there. You also get shields, which are handy, and your base racial speed is pretty good. Now, if you pick High Elf, you also get a free cantrip. So you get a free additional spell. Let me see. High Elf cantrip. Okay. So you can pick which one of these you want. Friends is what I would take, personally. And that's really strong, especially in the early game. So pretty much what this does is it gives you 2 dice for your charisma checks, which means if you have high charisma and all these other bonuses, you're almost never going to miss on those checks. Now, someone could go hostile with you if you do this, but I think it's probably just another charisma check. I don't know. We'll find out. I've never had anyone turn on me for this, but there are definitely some situations where you just pass a charisma check and the people you're talking to just leave. Like, you're talking them into not fighting you and they just leave. So they never have a chance to check for hostility with you again. So that one is really nice. Where you can also do minor illusion at a certain point, which is also pretty nice for distracting people and allowing you to do other things. Let me see my cantrips. Okay, I normally have friendship and I have minor illusion, so I guess it doesn't matter. So we'll get rid of this one. This makes you a little bit more resilient to damage if you're getting hit, but minor illusion is, I think, pretty decent out of combat. We've got Mage Hand too if we want that anyways, even if we're not get thinky, so it doesn't matter. And then Vicious Mockery we talked about before about why that's so good. Okay, Bard, High Elf, Subrace. Wood Elf is pretty good too. The only benefit of Wood Elf now is you move a little bit further. You can move 10.5 meters, which is significant, over 9. In early access, it also gave you a free stealth skill, proficiency in stealth, which it does not give you anymore. So that's kind of a shame. But I was Wood Elf in the early access, but I'm going to switch it over to High Elf. Okay, you could do Full Elf as well, but there's like just not as many benefits to it. Really, the half is the one that's going to give you the most benefits. And then spell-wise, we can do Talking with Animals early on. Healing Word is okay. It's not that great. We do have other people that can heal as well. Fairy Fire is also extremely good. Every time we level up, I believe we can change these. But we'll do that. I would say you 100% want Dissonant Whispers and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. And then Heroism, as we said, is extremely good. And then this one is just kind of whatever. I'm going to take Speak with Animals. Again, I think other people can do that too. But if you want something that's better in combat, Fairy Fire is good. Or if you're, playing a race, if you're playing the Githyanki or something and people are going to be racist against you, you can take Disguise Self. You just have to use one spell slot, and I think you keep it until a long rest. Okay, instrument, I'm just picking the flute. I've done the lute before, but flute just sounds cool. Okay, background. So you can pick a background here, which this is twofold. First of all, you get a couple of extra skills. The second one is read it closely. It will tell you the kinds of things you do that is true to your nature, and if you do enough stuff that's true to your nature, you basically get an inspiration, as they call it. That's pretty much a reroll on an important skill check, and this is huge. If you're having this major dialogue thing, you're about to recruit this person, or you're about to avoid like a really disastrous fight, and you roll a 14 and you needed a 15, you can re-roll it. You can store up to 4 of those re-rolls at once. So you really want to pick a background that suits your style of play, the type of stuff you're going to be doing, right? So learning Sacred Rite, so reading all the books you come across in different shrines will give you stuff here. You get skills for Insight and Religion. Charlatan, you lie to a bunch of people, you turn people against each other, you kind of do evil stuff. That works. Deception and Sleight of Hand. Criminal, you steal a bunch of stuff, you do illegal things, you're going to be inspired. Deception and Stealth. Entertainer, preserving art and bringing joy to downtrodden. Okay, so helping out poor people. This one would be pretty good. I think this would fit my character a bit. It's just that, like, performance and acrobatics, haven't been a huge deal so far early on. But if it turns out to be a bigger deal later in the game, and you know that, then you could pick that. Folk Hero, challenging tyrants to protect the helpless, saving innocents. That's another one that I could really gel with, but animal handling and survival I don't think are something I've seen great use with so far. Guild Artisan, basically crafting stuff. I haven't done anything with the crafting systems. I don't know. Insight, Persuasion is really, really good. That's probably the best skill in the game, I think. It's pretty close. Insight's also pretty good. Noble. This is what we're going to pick. So accumulating renown, power, and loyalty will raise your status. So just getting money, befriending highbrow people, stuff like that. Maybe not the most, I guess I'd say compatible with myself or RP, but, you know, just kind of that nobility in and of itself, kind of holding yourself to high standards and things like that. I could kind of get on board with that. But really, it's persuasion and history are both very good skills as well. So we're going to do noble. You could do outlander as well. Surviving unusual hazards, athletics and survival. So if you want to jump around and do crazy stuff. Sage, learning about the world, reading a bunch of books, arcana and history. Soldier, fighting a bunch of stuff, smart tactics, all that. And urchin, you know, street smarts, things like that. Sleight of hand and stealth are both very good. Sleight of hand is probably the second best skill in the game. So we're doing noble. And then bard comes with also a bunch. You get 3 different skills. I think most classes get 2. Now I'm going to be doing a lore bard. So at level 3 we're going to get 3 additional skills. That's going to be, I believe it's sleight of hand, intimidation. There's one other one that's pretty good. Arcana. So we don't want to pick those because we're already going to get those later on. So even though sleight of hand is one of the best in the game, we're not going to do that one. So I think if you're not going that, if you're going a different bard build, you definitely want to get sleight of hand, like, immediately. So we're going to be weaker at lock picking and stealing stuff for the first, like, 2 levels, but then we'll pick it back up. And you also get expertise, which means you get double your proficiency bonus at level 3, and we want that in persuasion and sleight of hand. So I think the rogue is the only other one that gets expertise in 2 things, which makes them, again, another really good sort of story management character. Okay, so stealth for sure. I feel like I would like religion, but you got to remember you have other people in your party. Specifically, I'm going to have the cleric, who's really good at wisdom and religion stuff. So if I come across some tome or some shrine and I need to do a religion check on it, I can have her do that check for me. Because I'm almost positive she's always going to be in my party. She's one of my favorite people. Might even try to romance her. We'll talk about that later. I guess performance and deception. I haven't seen a place where performance matters that much, but I could see it mattering in the story later. Deception does sometimes come up if you can't do persuasion, if you have to be sneaky about something. You don't want to tell somebody the truth. So, I kind of like these, and again, we're going to get Arcana, Sleight, and Intimidation later. Acrobatics is possible. That could be interesting. And then, again, like religion and stuff like that might... Perception is very, very good. But my homegirl is going to be good at that. So I think we're going to go with these. Okay. And then proficiencies... you only really benefit from even numbers on the proficiencies. Basically, every 2 points is going to give you a +1 on your dice roll. So if you're rolling a dice for something dexterity based, if you have a 16, you're going to get +3 on your dice roll. Also on your damage and your chance to hit with that stuff. Charisma is on your chance to hit with spells and your dialogue checks. You're going to get +3 off of that. So as high as you can possibly get is 17 early on, which doesn't do a lot for you. Now there are some things later on in the game, I think, where, you know, maybe it matters if you have 1 more point, something that'll give you like +1 charisma or whatever. But I think early on, just making sure that I get the +3 charisma and +3 dex, because both of those are very good, is where I want to be. I don't care as much about constitution. Some people love that, but the bosses are going to one-shot you anyways as bard most of the time, and a lot of other things. 1 or 2 life can matter. But usually you can manage it if one person kind of goes down. You can save them and prop them up with some healing spells and stuff like that. So, especially on my backline characters, I don't care as much about Constitution. I know a lot of other people love it. And then again, I've got someone else for Wisdom. I'm going to have a Barbarian or a Fighter for Strength stuff. And then Intelligence is sort of whatever. It's fine. Okay, so we're going to do that. We've got all this. Proceed. Okay. Go with Feronia. That was kind of my WoW name. I believe that's like a goddess of the wild or something, which doesn't exactly fit with this, but I just kind of like the name, so whatever. That's what we're going with. And then... wait a minute. Where's the... edit appearance. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so again, I've got most of this, I think, kind of down.
What was that?
I'm trying to remember which one of these... So quite a few options. We'll go with her, and then... Now, it's just how it is. I just kind of like my European, light hair, complexion, all that stuff. It is what it is. There's other stuff out there that's beautiful as well. But that's just how I roll. Now, the genitals thing, I'm not going to show that because I don't want to get demonetized on the very first one, but there are some possible romance scenes out there, so you can kind of figure out what you want to do with it. I thought there was B. Where is A? So they have a lot more male genitalia options out there. I guess default is A. Okay, I'm gonna hopefully not get demonetized. So there's gonna be some mild animated nudity here. I think the only option is, how much hair do you want in like an intimate area? So let me see. That basically the same. Okay, we'll go with that. Okay, that's it. Hopefully don't get demonetized for 3 seconds there. But it's basically like, you want all natural or do you want like, trimmed, hairless, wax, whatever, something like that. They got a couple options. Prefer the hairless variants myself, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. Pick your fave. May or may not matter if there's romance or not. Okay, you do tattoos, piercings. I kind of like... Now, you can't really see. I'm going to put her hair up. I think there's one that was like barred rings. It's kind of cool. Okay, and then eyes. I like elf green. Elf spring, elf green 1. I kind of like the elf spring. Okay. We'll go with that. Makeup. I didn't do much makeup. Oh. Maybe a little makeup there then. Let's see. Now, I haven't found a way to change the eyebrows, actually, which I didn't think mattered, but it did kind of bother me a little bit. Makeup expert, obviously. So much. I guess we'll go with that. Okay, makeup color black. Alright. I guess let's go with black. I mean, that was kind of cool, but I think I'd get tired of it. I think it'd look a little silly. Okay, we'll go with that. Eye makeup intensity. Sure. Okay. Go with that. Lip. Let's keep the red. I kind of like some glossy lip. That's too much. A little bit. Okay. There's so many things, just like you would expect in one of these types of games. Okay, and I believe this was the hair that I liked. Again, there's like 50 different hairstyles. It looks noble. Now you can see with their hair up like that, you can see the ears a little bit better. Or the earrings. Not that it matters that much, but... Okay, highlights. I'm gonna go no with the highlights for now. And then... hair color... I think I liked red before. It's either that or... that one. This, I mean, like... almost a little unnatural, but... I wish I could change her eyebrow color. I mean, you've got all these other things. I've got all these cool, colorful hair. I mean, the eyebrow, I guess, sort of matches the eye makeup stuff, so that's like not as bad. But I wish I could make her eyebrows like lighter. I guess we'll go with that. That looks a little more natural, even though it's like a fantasy game. Okay. And with that, no graying. Facial hair. See, you can like pick beard, but I didn't see anywhere you could pick like eyebrows or whatever. Okay, so no beard. Alright. Ronia. I think, let's see, stealth, history, deception, performance, persuasion, light armor, shields, and crossbows. Yeah. 16, alright.
You need a guardian. Choose one.
Okay, so we pick a guardian now. Now, I don't know where this comes in or, like, how this plays out. So race, we're gonna do half elf again. Do high elf. Keep it about the same. Very similar. A little bit different.
Remarkable.
Remarkable.
Okay.
Truly.
Freckle. All that. Okay. I guess we'll give her the elf too. Or bard rings, whatever. Eyes. I'll give her blue. Now you can only get the elf colors, I think, if you're an actual elf. Okay, we'll do elf blue 3. Makeup. Do that kind as well. And then get that gloss going. Flossing on the gloss. Okay, and then her hairstyle, what did I do before? I'm trying to remember. It might have been that. Kind of like the thick, sort of lustrous hair that's like partially up. I think might have been this. I don't know this person's role. Like, if this is gonna, like, I guess it doesn't matter. Alright. I think that's probably good. Remember, I know that was my main character. This is right there. That looks good to me. It's fine. And then we'll go... Let's go blonde on her. Okay. Highlights, whatever. Graying facial hair. Okay. So finally, I think we're done with everything. Now we can start the game. Now the episode's basically over with. Okay, venture forth. So we'll just get the cinematics and the setup here, and then obviously it's going to be a lot more actual gameplay next time. I thought I had it all figured out, but this is a pretty long cinematic too, I think. It's pretty cool though. So you're like on this big tentacle squid looking ship called a nautiloid, I think. I believe this is Baldur's Gate. The city. Could be another big city. It's like harvesting all these people. There's a Githyanki Dragon Riders. Fitting to roll up on them. She's a Githyanki. Like those Dragon Riders. just teleported to some weird ass dimension with a bunch of little devils and imps and things. So, started off in the Baldur's Gate normal dimension, and then presumably it's trying to run from these dragons, and it warped to some ice place in the galaxy. It followed him there, and now it just warped to some hell-looking dimension with a bunch of demons and imps and things that started attacking the ship. So that's kind of where we are right away.
My head.
So yeah, really cool game. Awesome cinematics. I've heard there's like 200 hours of cinematics or something. Now, I don't think you see all of that in one playthrough. Some of it's going to depend on your choices you make. Some of it's going to depend on which characters you pick. You know, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we'll start our real adventure next time. Again, sorry we didn't get a ton of actual gameplay, but you guys know in any game like this, with this many options to start with, it's going to take a second. Now, I could have had... I wanted to have a lot of that preloaded, especially kind of the building the physical character, but I didn't want you guys to miss out on that initial, like, cutscene, and I don't have time to do video editing and clips. It just has to all be one shot, so hopefully that didn't take too long, but I did want to explain some early on about the character creation, some of my choices, what I'm thinking about picking this character, so that if you want to play the game, which I highly recommend, it's an amazing game. I've only played it for 35 hours, like I said, but really, really good. If you like D&D, fantasy stuff, or just really good gameplay, I highly recommend it. So I just wanted to walk you guys through that. Took a bit of time, obviously. Then we had the cinematics. But we'll get in here. We'll get rolling next time. I will say as well, I recommend running it on DirectX 11 if you have a fairly high-end computer. Vulkan is another thing you can do, but that gave me some performance issues because I run an HDR. I think it's like high dynamic range or whatever, and I've got a, was it like a 3860 or something? I don't remember what number it is, but like the last generation pretty high-end NVIDIA graphics card, the 3000 series, with HDR, and I've got a 4K TV and all that, and I was trying to run it with Vulkan, and it was like glitching and messing up a little bit occasionally. So they tell you to do Vulkan, but from my experience, if you have a pretty high-end rig, I mean, I'm obviously an amateur, maybe there's ways you can work around that with Vulkan, but just right out of the box, DirectX 11 seemed to work a lot better if you're running HDR and 4K. Which I am. You guys probably won't see it that way on YouTube because the file size would be massive for me to upload. I think it downscales it to 1080p or maybe 1440, I don't remember. But anyways, that's one observation I'll say as far as performance if you're wondering which one of those you should run it in. But anyways, we'll get it here next time. I will say again, you know, very exciting. There's a lot of interesting story going on early on. I was definitely caught up in it with the amount that I was able to do, so... Anyways, that's it. Have a good day. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. A lot more action next time, and I'll see you then. Have a good day.